In December 2009, 7 CIA operatives were killed at a secret base in Afghanistan. They were blown up by a Jordanian secret agent who double-crossed them.
The bomb attack caused the CIA's worst loss of life in decades. Author Joby Warrick's book, The Triple Agent, looks at this disastrous attempt by the CIA to infiltrate Al-Qaeda. And he joins us now from Washington. Joby Warrick, good morning.
Good to be with you.
Now, the central figure in your book is, of course, this so-called golden source, Houman Khalil al-Balawi. We start the book learning about him. He's a mild-mannered Jordanian doctor who also has a rather secret life in cyberspace.
Exactly. You couldn't have scripted a more unlikely character to be an agent. This man was a pediatrician working at a UN refugee clinic, treating children and women and having a very quiet life. And then he begins to have this dangerous hobby on the side, which is writing these very inflammatory blogs on the internet, on jihadist websites under a fake name. And he's becoming quite popular, and people around the world are tuning in to what he has to say. And he's discovered by the Jordanian intelligence agency, and they try to flip him and turn him into an agent. And this is what begins his very interesting journey into a triple agent and eventually dragging the CIA into a deadly trap.
Well, the Jordanians and the US do indeed think they've flipped this character. He is sent into Pakistan's remote and rugged tribal regions, where he eventually comes into contact with Al-Qaeda's number 2, Ayman al-Zawahiri, an event which, Joby, it's fair to say, electrified the US intelligence establishment.
Yeah, exactly. If you could think back a few months ago, how excited people got when they realized they had Osama bin Laden potentially in their sights. It's exactly the way it was a little less than 2 years ago. This doctor had gotten into contact with Ayman al-Zawahiri, who was then the number 2 in Al-Qaeda, now the number 1, and was treating him, was giving him medical services, and was sending back real-time information that the CIA could then corroborate that showed that, yes, indeed, he was treating this top Al-Qaeda operative. And so everyone got excited all the way up to the White House. It looked like they were getting very close to striking a big strike against Al-Qaeda.
But sadly, of course, all was not as it seemed here.
Yes, you think of the CIA as being the master of the clever ruse, the front company, the trick, the deception, and this was a case where Al-Qaeda turned the tables on the CIA. They lured the agency into a trap very carefully, very slowly, until the agency was extremely excited about what they were potentially going to get. Instead, the man who was supposed to be their hot agent walks into a meeting with a bomb strapped to his chest, blew himself up, and killed 7 Americans and 2 others.
And finally, the day did come when, as you say, that formal debriefing was to happen between Balawi and his CIA handlers. Before the explosion, you take us through what were some extraordinary lapses in procedure and security to allow this person to get into a highly fortified CIA base in Afghanistan.
Yeah, looking back at it now, there are all kinds of red flags that should have gone off, and indeed some of them did, and they were just ignored. But essentially, here's a man who had never been seen by the Americans. He had been recruited by Jordanians. No one had ever looked at him, and yet they let him get into this very secure CIA base, not through just 1 security checkpoint, but 3, without even being checked for wires or bombs or guns or anything else. Only after he was inside the CIA compound, in the presence of 14 officers and a cake, a birthday cake that had been baked for him, was being walked over to him at the time. Then he is able to explode this device and with this devastating effect.
And you take us through the gripping final moments of his and the lives of the 9 other people killed in this attack. What actually happened when the car carrying him pulled to a stop in front of all of these gathered CIA operatives? What did he do to trigger what turned out to be well-placed concern by the Americans?
Yes, this was not an ordinary bomb that he had around his chest, but it had been carefully designed for this purpose, which is to kill as many people in as large a radius as possible. So it's military explosives, C4, it's hundreds of pieces of shrapnel and ball bearings and that kind of thing. He arrives at the scene, as I mentioned, a birthday cake. The people realized that he just had a birthday a couple of days before, so they were prepared to welcome him, to make him feel very much greeted and taken care of. And he gets out of the car to meet them and walks around the car and starts to chant in Arabic, "God is great." And only that moment everyone realizes that things are about to go terribly wrong, and of course by that time it's too late. He has a detonator on his wrist, he hits it, and the explosions go off, and all these people die. It was the worst single deadliest accident or incident for the CIA in 25 years.
And finally, Joby, the various investigations after this awful event did show the CIA in its enthusiasm to corral this guy and get what they thought was the valuable intelligence from him, did overlook what had been standard field practice and standard security practice for decades.
Indeed, when you have an informant, one of the first rules is nobody sees him. You want to have his, only a few people know his real identity, to know what he looks like, just for security purposes. Another cardinal rule is when someone goes undercover, you have to assume that they're tainted when they come back to you because you don't know what kinds of threats they faced or what kinds of situations they've been in. In this case, there was so much excitement to see this person, and almost also so much a willingness to believe the story and to want to quickly exploit all the intelligence that he could bring with him, that some of those usual precautions were thrown aside in the haste to get ready to meet this man.
Joby Warrick, it's a gripping read. In fact, it kept me up most of last night. I thank you. I don't thank you for that, but I thank you for the book. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
I'm very sorry about the bad night's sleep, but thank you very much for having me.